Hey everybody, this is Andy with RS Xperience. In this video, I'm going to review this one-of-one salmon red 1989 Porsche 911 Turbo. Hey, wait a second, did Porsche make a turbo, a 911 Turbo in 1989? Well, of course they did, but it's more affectionately known as the 930 Turbo. This car, I actually had a poster of this car on my bedroom wall as a teen. In today's video, I'm gonna do a walk around of the exterior, do a quick review of the interior. We're gonna take this thing out for a drive, and at the end, I'm gonna give you my first impressions of driving an air-cooled Porsche. Hey, I'm Andy, a high-performance car enthusiast with a passion for well-engineered automobiles. I love to drive mountain roads with like-minded enthusiasts, along with sharing driving tips and techniques. The 930 was Porsche's internal designation for this 1989 911 Turbo. The 930 was introduced in model year 1975, and ran through model year 1989. An interesting piece of information, though, is that between 1980 and 1985, this car was not brought into the US due to emissions regulation. They next appeared in the US in 1986. There were just under 19,000 930s produced over its 15-year run. This car remains one of the most admired turbos in the Porsche lineup. The 930 is powered by Porsche's famous flat six air-cooled engine. The original 930 Turbo had 282 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. This particular model has a few upgrades on it with upgraded wastegate, manifold, cams, and exhaust. With those upgrades, this car is actually putting out 350 horsepower. The 1989 model year actually had the upgraded G50 5-speed transmission with a limited slip differential. The 1989 930 Turbo weighs in at 2,976 pounds. The 930 would do 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds, has a top speed of 165 miles per hour. The 930 got 13 miles city, 19 highway, and a combined 15. So not a lot of miles, which is probably why this thing has a pretty decent sized fuel tank at 22.3 gallons. The starting price for the 1989 930 Turbo was $70,975, but really great examples of these cars today go well over $180,000. The owner of the car was at a concourse event, and Dr. Porsche was actually there. And there's a funny story about how he saw the car, was really intrigued by it, that this is beautiful. And the owner wanted him to sign it, but he was a little busy at the time. But later that afternoon, he and his son came back to the car, and Dr. Porsche signed the inside of this hood. A story is told that in his life, he's only signed about 33 cars. So the 930 Turbo came standard with 16 by 8 inch rims up front and 16 by 9s in the rear. They had a 225/50 in the front and a 245/45 at the rear. The owner of this car has upgraded to 17 by 9.5s up front and 17 by 11s in the rear. The brakes on the car were the iron cross-drilled rotors. They are 304 millimeters up front and 309 in the rear. There are 4 piston calipers, both front and rear. Here's a trivia question for you. Why on this Porsche are the rear rotors larger than the front? As you know, on most modern 911s and sports cars, the front rotors are much larger than the rear. So if you know the answer to that, put it down in the comments below. The 930 stock has struts with spindles and torsion bars up front and a standalone shock absorber and torsion bars at the rear. This has larger sway bars front and rear. One of the things I love about the 930 Turbo is this amazing rear Decklid spoiler to get as much air down into that engine as possible. And these were affectionately known as the whale tail when you saw these things on the road. Also, we have, you probably remember these accordion style bumpers on the back here. We have this nice polished exhaust tip, and then across the back we have Porsche in the lighting, and then Turbo up on the deck lid here. Let's take a listen to that engine. The color of the interior is called white linen, and it has a very, it's not pure white, right, sitting inside a white car, but it has a really nice little cream touch, a little bit of ivory color to it. And one of the things you can see is along the edge here, it has this maroon piping that matches the exterior of the car beautifully. There's adjustments for the seats as well. Inside the car, we have the G50 5-speed transmission. And one of the things I want you guys to take a look at are the pedals on this car. Similar, reminds me all old VW Beetle, but the pedals are actually hinged from the floor, whereas most modern day cars, they're hinged from the top. This car also has the classic sport leather steering wheel, which looks really nice. And when you look at the gauges on this car, you have the traditional Porsche 5-gauge setup, but for me, it's all the analog pieces that really excite me. We have no digital stuff in here, and I love that. Additionally, in the car, we have air conditioning, heating, and we have a stereo system with cassette. Now, this is upgraded. This isn't stock. And the story behind this is actually a BMW head unit, and the owner of this car was on the engineering team that designed and produced this head unit that probably appeared in over 50,000 BMWs. So I think that's a cool story there. One of the things I love about this car too is the compactness of it, right? If I compare this to my 991.2 GT3 RS, right? I mean, I'm like reaching out and I can like touch the windshield sitting here. I could never do that in the RS. And I just like this cozy compactness. So the really neat thing about being inside these cars are the unique smells you had back in the day. So the smells in here are kind of a combination of leather, the gasoline, and oil. So leather, gasoline, and oil. So there you go. If you're looking, maybe you can create a candle for that. So you can light a candle in your home. So when you come in the house, you smell like you're still in your car. This car also, like most modern day 911s, does have seats in the rear. Right now, the seats are down, creating a storage shelf, but you could fit a couple of young folks in the back of this seat, in the back seats if you needed to. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's take this thing out for a drive. Not that I wasn't nervous ahead of time, but the nervousness just shot up about 20% because Steve has been the caretaker and owner of this car for 23 years, and he's done a lot of work to keep this thing immaculate, and the number of awards and shows this thing have won are pretty incredible. And I was told today that I'm the first person that he's ever allowed to drive this car. We got clutch in. This is kind of weird because the clutch is there. And this clutch has some weight to it too. That clutch has some
hydraulic, so
it's hydraulic, but it's good. So we got the clutch in. We're in neutral. Let's go ahead and fire this thing up. Which way am I going? Oh, that sounds so good. And away we go. Immediately you feel the steering is like, especially at low speeds, right? It's kind of heavy. You kind of got to crank on it a little bit. But then once you get moving along, it lightens up. So right now the steering actually feels pretty good. God, this thing, it feels really tight. This car feels like it's really put together well. The shifts, this G50 gearbox feels good. The shifting feels actually pretty smooth, not clunky or anything like that. The brakes, I just used them a little bit there. So the brakes, you have to get into them a little bit, right? You have to feel that part where the brake is actually engaging, but that part feels good. Visibility out the back is perfect. Rear view mirrors, visibility is great. And then this windshield, it's like right in front of you. I mean, the windshield is like 18 inches from my nose. It's like right there. And Steve, I don't know, has this glass been replaced?
No, it's original.
Oh my God, this glass is like perfect. Like, you know, my cars all have the speckled and peppered from driving on the roads and whatnot. This windshield is really clean. I like that I could see these two humps in the front, the fenders. God, that, I don't want to get into it, you know, when that Porsche turbo kicks in, but 350 horsepower, and if this thing does weigh 2,900 pounds, oh yeah, there we go. It rides really well. I mean, a smoothness, whoa. Smoothness, I mean, this feels really good. The steering is, I'm trying to get a feel for the steering. You gotta put a little bit of, you have to put some, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? Like turn, you gotta put something into it. Because it doesn't, you can't just move it a little bit and it's gonna turn. You have to turn the wheel. I'm very impressed with the ride. The compliance, I mean, this road has some bumps and some undulations in it, but this car is handling it really well. So from a suspension standpoint, car feels great. I'm only, the RPMs are only like 3,000-ish. I'm not really on it. We got on it a little bit on that one straightaway. But one of the things I was a little concerned about with the car was how the power comes on, right? We've heard these things where these turbos, all of a sudden they spool up and you're like going, whoa, but I didn't feel that. At least on the time I drove the car, I did not feel that, like, oh my God, the thing's gonna get away from me, or the power just throws you back in your seat immediately. That's one of the things I was worried about, like this thing was all of a sudden gonna go like, you know.
It will.
Oh, okay, all right. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this channel, give this video a like. It does help me to grow the channel and bring you more videos of cars like these. Now we're gonna have the owner, Steve, is going to drive the car, because Andy was, you know, kind of driving a little bit like a older person. Oh, okay, so there we go. There was where the turbo kicks in. Wow, that feels good. And you could hear the waste, you know, the turbo spooling up, and wow, that sounds. So obviously he's more comfortable driving this car than I was, obviously. When Steve bought this car, you bought this car, would you say 24,000?
Yes.
$24,000, but he's probably put over 50,000 into it, plus his own, you know, blood, sweat, and tears. Oh yeah. This car has some serious power. Oh wow, that thing moves. And there's the brakes. I love it. Like you said, you hook it up and then it starts to turn. God, it feels so good. So going through that turn right there, I did not feel much in the way of any body roll. on our RS Xperience rallies, right? We're out there and, you know, we drive spirited. If you had one of these cars, you're gonna have no problem keeping up with us on the roads, no doubt about it. Oh my gosh. Even if you don't have the turbo, I would imagine having the lighter car, especially in the twisties, it's going to handle just fine, right? Where you might run into a little bit issues like on the straightaways, some of the higher horsepower cars would pull away, but I don't think this car would have any problem keeping up with any of the cars that come on our trips. So guys, if you have a 930 turbo or even a 993, which I know you'll never take out on the road, we'd love to have you come to one of our events. All right, my nerves, I got to come down a little bit here. So that was amazing. I mean, I love this thing. Now, what's really interesting about these cars is, like, this car has like no nannies on it, right? There's no stability control, no ABS, there's none of that stuff on the car. So with these cars, you have to work at driving the car. The car doesn't drive for you. You have to work at it. Whereas like today's modern cars, like if you think about the 600 LT that I'm driving, I mean, that car has so many nannies, so many things on it. It makes you look like a hero. It helps you. You know, it drives a little bit for you if you want to think of it that way. But this car here, you have to be a driver. You have to know what you're doing to get the most out of this car. But again, I love the sounds, the smells, and the feel of this car. They are so visceral. So a big shout out to my friend Steve for allowing me to do this review, and especially being like the first one who gets to drive this amazing one-of-one salmon red 930 1989 Porsche Turbo. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And as always, stay healthy and stay safe.